Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Martine Cohen. Martine, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Very much my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Thomas. So I'm actually an attorney by profession, turned life and business coach and strategist, speaker, and recent author as well of a book entitled No More Layers: Discover Your Inner Power and Reclaim True Freedom from the Inside Out. Just in a nutshell, I was an attorney for 20 something years, and in 2016, I had a very serious concussion, and it left me for a number of months without the use of my brain. And the silver lining in all that was that I was actually able to go inward. I started facing my fears and feeling, a lot of different emotions, and we all have limiting beliefs and layers that stop us from being who we know we can be, and sort of like we define ourselves through our thoughts and through things that happen to us and through sort of our understanding of the world around us, whereas really there's so much more to us. And what I discovered was there was so much more to me than my brain, and while my brain was maybe my best assistant, I shouldn't let my brain run me or determine what I can and cannot do or who I am or even the kind of thoughts that it generates for me. So I was able to go inward because my brain was not there to protect me, so to speak, right? Our brain keeps us in a certain status quo about, understanding who we are, what we're meant to do, what we're supposed to do, what's not us, what's for us, instead of flowing and being much more. I like to call it my book, the adventurer mindset, right? The mindset of no expectations, being open, trusting yourself, showing up fully to whatever experiences before you, and then navigating it in the way that you see fit and it's aligned to you. And our brain doesn't like that because it doesn't like the unknown. And so I got very intimate with my brain over this period of time simply because it wasn't functional and it couldn't protect me. But it allowed me to see this entire inner landscape that we each have, which is full of layers, limiting beliefs, and things that we believed about ourselves, but maybe are not aligned with and maybe don't agree with, including our thoughts, right? How many of us actually think about, well, do I agree with my thought? It disturbs me. I don't like it, but do I agree with it? Because if I don't, then it's not me, right? So all of that sort of wealth of experience led me to pivot organically from a legal strategist to a business and life strategist. And so I speak to those things. I wrote a book about it. I have clients. I've done some workshops, although I'm now more focusing on speaking engagements and my clients. And I have, clients that I consult with or on retainer to really spread that knowledge and information and wisdom, and for us to really get to know ourselves once again from the inside out, moving away from all the external noise and clutter, and giving ourselves the mind space and the permission, almost because it's also our birthright, to reacclimatize ourselves with ourselves, rethink about the relationship we want to have with ourselves and how we think about ourselves, and therefore how we show up to life, and then the actions that we take and how we can be proactive in our life rather than reactive, and then navigate it and create for ourselves what we know we can and what we want to.
Okay.
Sorry, that was
Thank you
longer
for,
than a nutshell, but I hope that gives you a sense.
I like the introduction. Thank you. It's quite an insightful point about the difference between you and your brain. So would you mind elaborating on that concept? Because I think it's quite an important one, I think.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And it's, I think, at the crux of it for me, anyways, personally, and I'm sure for many of the listeners, which is what we don't know how to distinguish ourselves from our thoughts, our emotions, therefore from our brain. For me, I ended up creating an identity around my brain because as an attorney, your number one asset is your mind, right? It's your brain, it's strategy, it's intellectual and sort of gymnastics and learning and all that kind of stuff. But what I didn't realize is I was so much more than just that. And the only way for me to actually live it, experience it, and then come to that conclusion from a very aligned way and from the inside out was actually that temporary loss of the use of my brain. When I thought like, oh my goodness, who am I without my brain? Do I even know myself? How can I filter the world? Like, what's going to happen to me? I don't know me. And then I was like, hold on a second, who's asking those questions? How come I have consciousness without a functional brain? I was diagnosed with post-concussive syndrome, which meant that there were a lot of things I couldn't do. I would not be able to have this conversation with you because I wouldn't be able to understand your question by the end of it. I understood words separately, but not put together. So it was really dysfunctional for quite a while. And then it was like, but I still had consciousness. I still had awareness. I didn't judge my thoughts and feelings. I didn't judge my fears. I didn't judge the intensity of my emotions, but they were there and I could experience them. And that opened up a whole new world to me understanding, oh, I'm not my brain. Not only am I not my brain, but I'm so much more, which means we are not our brains, right? Because we're all humanity, we're all wired the same way. We're so much more, but our brain is there to anchor us in a reality that it creates for us, mental constructs, identities around our life experiences, what I call layers, things that we have from childhood that we've sort of, internalized in a certain way land for us. And then that creates our understanding of the world around us and our belief system about ourselves. But again, it doesn't mean that we even agree with it or it's truly who we are. And it's so by working through those things and understanding that you're not your brain. Your brain is your biggest, your best assistant, and it could be your biggest asset, but you are the one in charge, not your brain. And that's why we have overwhelm today. That's why we have so much anxiety in the world today, because our brain's not meant to be in the driver's seat and it can't manage all that. We're meant to be in the driver's seat and instruct our brain and let it know how we want it to work for us and with us.
Okay. Well, I have had thoughts about this topic before, and I wonder what you. So, I suppose a good follow up might be, if you are not your brain, what are you?
Right. So that's actually the question in the back of my book, because that is what I was led to
Is that going to
myself.
be spoilers?
It's exactly there. It's no, it's in the back, so it's okay. But it's like the full concussion and that whole experience for me, my whole personal journey led me to ask that question. So it's really funny that intuitively that's what you came up with. But really very cool. If I'm not my brain, who am I? And if we are not our brains, who are we? And we are so much more. We are everything else. So if your brain and your personality and your mental constructs and beliefs about yourself are not truly who you are, then what are you? You're the essence of that. You're your consciousness. You're your awareness. You're the one who comes and says, I want to start this new habit. And your brain's going to say, no, 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 we don't need to do that because look, status quo is fantastic. And it doesn't matter that you don't eat healthy, but you're alive. Why would you change something? Because your brain doesn't discern if it's good or bad, right? When we want to go do something and fear stops us, whose fear? That comes from your brain. But who is the one? What's the part inside of you that wants to go do it? And it feels that they can accept or but for this fear, right? When we want to, stop a bad habit, why is it so difficult? It really is hard, but nobody's stopping you. It's between you and you, right? It's that internal relationship that you have inherently with yourself and that you're born with that is kind of creating this tug of war. So it's the brain that says status quo is the best because it's known, and the unknown is danger, and danger can mean death. And this is how we're wired for thousands of years, but it applies to everything, not just life and death situations. So it puts us in fight or flight when we try to change something, even if it's for the better. But the agent of that change and the higher power, higher version of yourself that says, I want to change, I want to stop this habit, and gets this sort of resistance, almost like a young child who says, no, 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 I don't want to do this. That's your brain. But the higher self who says, I want to change this habit, or I need a better job, or I'm not aligned with this, that's who you are. That's the essence of who we are. We don't tap into it often enough because we have become so reliant on our brain. But our brain is not meant to call the shots for us because it's wired for a different purpose. It has a slightly different job.
Any what would you say, inspiration from ancient philosophers with respect to essence? I might be wrong. I think Aristotle was spoke about the concept of essence. Is there any inspiration there that you took?
So I didn't. It's all based, both what I speak to and my book is all based on my own personal journey and experience, and then the universal wisdom that I accessed because of it and because I didn't have my brain, and just my own thoughts and new perspectives and understanding of the world, of why we're here as humanity, of how to cultivate and nurture that relationship we have with ourselves, how to get ahead of our brains and actually talk it off the ledge when it gets nervous. We don't get nervous, our brain gets nervous. We are a spiritual entity inside a body and we merge together and that makes a human being. But we need to understand the true essence of who we are and the purpose of why we're here. So it's not that there's an inspiration from early philosophers, but I think that seekers of truth all end up from different angles finding that truth with a capital T. And so coming to similar conclusions, each in their own wording through their own personal experience. But there are many people that talk to something similar, but through sometimes it's a scientific angle, and sometimes it's a spiritual one, and sometimes it's a brain-based one. But at the end of the day, we're all seeking for that kind of meaning and deeper, not understanding because that's intellectual, but knowing, which is higher than knowledge, right? Information is not the same thing as knowing, and wisdom is not the same thing as knowledge. And so those are the things that connect us more to each other and most importantly to ourselves. And I think that's the essence of the person, is outside of the physical, outside of the personality, outside of the fears, because everything is fear-based. What else is there that I can cultivate, and can I live from that place?
Thank you for that. Very interesting stuff. We spoke briefly before we were recording, and I mentioned the fact that you got some very interesting keynotes, topics for keynotes, and I was hoping to pick your brains about the maybe a lesson from each one of them.
Sure.
And the first one, if you don't mind, is the mindset reset. Anything that we haven't covered so far that's applicable to that particular keynote?
So what I will say is that in the mindset reset, the most important thing, and the thing that we don't always realize that we show up with to any situation, even before we actually physically show up to it, is our mindset. We need to check in with our mindset. Sometimes when you start your day and you wake up in the morning, I'm so tired, this is not going to be such a good day. You've already set your mindset for that day, whether or not, even if you don't want to and you don't realize it, most of our brain activity in our consciousness happens actually below our consciousness, and about 10 to 15% is something that we're aware of, and then we just move into automatic pilot. That's again how we're wired, so that our brain can hold on to extra energy in case it needs it for an emergency. It's wired in a very cute way that doesn't serve us so much today in the scenarios that we have, but nevertheless, that's what it's wired for. So when you feel that your day or an action that you took or some scenario or process is not going the way that you want, there are a number of check-ins along the way that you can do. And I have that in the book as well. But the first one is always what I call the adventurer mindset, which is your mindset. Go in and check in with your mindset. What kind of mindset did you have that morning? What kind of mindset did you have before you went to speak to your employee whom you had to fire, but you wanted to do it in a great way? Or when you went to speak to your spouse about a sticky situation, but you really do want it to work out well, and it was a disaster, right? So rather than looking at the actual scenario or blaming the other person or blaming yourself, let's just look at, like, how did you approach this? What was your mindset before you went in? Because chances are there was already an entire story that your brain told you about how difficult it was going to be, or how careful you had to be, or how sensitive the situation is. And that doesn't allow you to have an approach that might flow and be fluid and adaptable in the moment, because those are the different points that would make a conversation, an action, or a process more successful than not. How fluid is it? How adaptable is it? And how present it is, rather than automatic pilot mode.
So true. And I sort of had a similar outlook in terms of I would refer to it as like interpretation. How are you interpreting a particular thing? And if you change your interpretation of something, you change how you react to it. 100% with you on that one. Next one, be the leader they need. What are your leadership
Yes. So,
principles
so,
that you like to
so
share?
exactly. So often I get to talk to, CEOs or different leaders or managers or whatnot. And there are a number of different principles that we talk about there. Sometimes people mistaken leader for boss, right? And so boss is a person who is more in control. And it's not intentional, by the way. It's just, again, how we're wired. It's just, it seems simpler to the brain. It's like, I'm the boss, which means I have the responsibilities. I pay the salary. So you need to do what I'm asking you because I know why I'm asking you to do that. But leadership and being the boss have nothing to do with each other. They're often the same role, but again, the perspective, the approach, the result, and the process are going to be completely different. So be the leader that they need is there are different leadership styles. And again, it's all about fluidity and adaptability. When you go to a certain employee or a team that you manage, let's say, or an organization, the question is, I'm coming in as a leader. I need to look at what are the needs. What are the needs for me to lead properly? So first of all, it's about leading myself. Very important point that we often miss. Am I the leader of me? Because if I'm not the leader of myself in my life, I'm not going to be able to lead somebody else. If I am, I'm almost the practice run, and it means that I can show up fully to something, understanding that it isn't about me at all. Leadership is not about the leader. It's about making sure that you give the people that you want to lead what they need to set them up for success so you can lead them well. Right? So it's a very interesting dynamic. And when you're talking about adults leading adults, that adds another level of complexity. It adds another layer, so to speak, because adults like to be in control, and I'm an adult. It's my autonomy. I don't want a boss on my head. But a leader or a mentor or someone is going to bring out the best in me, I'll probably be open to that. So the leader has to understand, whom am I leading? Who do I want to lead? And that instructs my leadership style. Because at the end of the day, what's the goal, right? If the goal is, let's say it's a company, I want the company to be successful. Success means everybody feels fulfilled and everybody's working towards a common goal. How do I, as leader, create that kind of environment? Because it's really up to me. And then it's up to me to choose my team well. And if there's a team member that can't do it, either we give them the tools to be able to do it, or they're just not part of the right team. They're not a good fit. And that's okay as well. But having the courage to recognize that is also part of leadership.
May I ask a follow-up about what you said regarding leading yourself? Because I kind of be nice to know, am I leading myself correctly or perhaps in a positive way? So can you share an example of what that might look like?
So leading yourself means that you're in charge of you. You accept and take on both the privilege and the responsibility of being fully accountable for every action. So it means that nothing happens to you, but it happens in front of you, before you. And therefore, you don't relinquish control or autonomy or your ability to choose because of something else. It's not, well, I lost my temper because so and so did this, or I can't do this today because look at me, poor me, like it's a horrible day. And yes, it's a horrible day, but what can you do? What can you create within that? Can you move the ingredients around, so to speak? You have a flat tire in the middle of the highway when you're in a rush to get to your next meeting where you have to make a great presentation to maybe get this deal. And then the question is not like, oh my goodness, it's all ruined. That's it. I'll never be. But it's like, okay, interesting. Approach it with curiosity. Now, what can I do here? What can I salvage? How can I create something that's going to work anyways? Well, maybe I'll take my phone and I'll do a video call because while I'm waiting for, here it's called the CAA. I don't know what it's called in England. The sort of the roadside assistance that's going to come and the tow truck. If we don't allow our brain to get overwhelmed or sort of like embedded in this fear that will rise up right away, and then we might feel like we're disempowered. If we hold on to our power, if we stay in the eye of the storm, which is the calmest place in the storm to be, rather than get sucked into the storm or the tsunami or the waves, then we have a lot of tools. This is that essence of who we are, can find the good or retrieve a solution in almost every scenario. You can make it better than what it appears if you are able to be in charge of your mind, who is going to right away jump to tell you a story. And usually not the one that you're going to love the most, right? Just because, again, it's wired that way. So every place that we are in or challenge, rather than looking at a problem, you look at it as a challenge and you say, okay, what can I do here? Not everything that I can't do, because the first thing your brain's going to show you is an entire shopping list of, now I'm going to miss now I'm going to miss the meeting. Now, oh my goodness, the flat tire happened. How come it happened to me? What does that mean about me? Right? It can go in so many different directions, as opposed to, okay, let's make a list about what I might be able to do here. Not my expectations of how my day was supposed to go, which my expectations were it's supposed to go perfectly, right? I planned it this way. But we drop the expectation and say, okay, this is the reality in front of me. What do I salvage here? What do I create here that's maybe something different than I ever imagined? And then when you do that, and the odd times that we do it, because sometimes we just do it automatically, we realize, oh my goodness, I was actually able to do this. There are some days where no matter what goes wrong, nothing can go wrong. Like for some reason, you're on a high, you're feeling amazing. So you might have things that normally you would you would sort of define as bad or difficult. And it's like, wow, I don't know. I just managed to make it work. Right? We all have days like that. We don't know how we hopped onto that train. But if we did it consciously and with awareness, we could repeat that in other situations and approach difficult situations as, okay, what can I do here? And not allow the situation to disempower you and not give over your own abilities to that situation.
Well, I think that leads us nicely to the next one. And I particularly like this title because I have done a lot of interviews or perhaps questions on self-talk, the topic of self-talk. So then the title is Self-Talk to Success. So yeah, anything that you haven't shared in the previous answer about that particular topic?
Okay, so I have shared quite a bit, but I want to add a little bit. Um, Self-talk is huge. And self-talk starts with actually our thoughts. Our thoughts are a form of self-talk. We talk to ourselves all day long. Some people talk out loud to themselves, some people talk quietly, but the truth is every time you generate a thought, who else is the recipient of it except for you? Unless you share it. And I'm going to tell you, this is what I'm thinking now. You know, this is a wonderful podcast. It's great to meet you. But if I don't share that with you, I'm actually having that conversation with me. Right. So all day long, I speak to myself. I have self-talk, but we're not aware of it. If I tell you now, in the last 2 hours, please tell me everything that you talked about to yourself. You did, but we don't recall because it's again, we're an automatic pilot. A lot of it is, behind the scenes or underneath the conscious level, and we just get the conclusions, right? Oh, I can't do this. I'm going to be so nervous. Oh my goodness, I don't know who Thomas is. How is it podcast going to be? Maybe I don't know the answers to his questions. Oh, I don't know this Martine Cohen. I don't know. Maybe she's good for my podcast. Maybe she isn't. So many things, right? And it can snowball into so many things when it's simply like, let me just see. Let me approach this with curiosity. Let me approach this with enthusiasm, like an adventure, and let's see where it goes. What can we create together? Right? But the self-talk that we have, we're not aware of. And the conclusion would be, oh my goodness, I'm so nervous. I don't want to do this. I'm going to cancel. It can go as far as that. But once we raise the awareness to not to the conclusion, but the conversation that happened just before that conclusion, right? That's the self-talk. Then we can channel it and we can direct it in a way that leads us to the outcome that we want, that leads us to success. And by success, I don't mean external success because everything happens first internally. I mean internal success. And internal success means being able to shift your approach, your outlook, your proactivity through a channel of positivity, through a channel that serves you best. It might mean that if you're, God forbid, a friend passes away or something, you will fully mourn that, but you won't get stuck in it. You'll fully experience it, but it won't define who you are or your life vision from that point forward. There's a very big distinction between the two. And I do believe that we don't have sufficient awareness around our self-talk. And this is why often what we call self-sabotage. It's never intentional. Nobody really wants to be in their own way. But our self-talk has a huge impact on us, more so than the talk of others, more so than the opinion others have of ourselves. And our self-talk to success means, first of all, being your own best friend and really getting the time to get to know yourself the way you would get to know a spouse, a friend, a child. We don't really spend a lot of time. This is who I am. This is my personality. I get angry at this. And no, but get to know yourself beyond your personality. Get to know yourself beyond your brain. Get to know what your true needs are. Get to know what works well for you and what kind of self-talk is actually helpful to you that you're aligned with and that you would want if you believed that you are free to create the one that you want for yourself, which we are. We just don't believe we are.
It's a great answer. Thank you for that. And one of the interesting things is you highlighting like all the thoughts that sort of went by you without you even realizing those automatic processes that you don't even raise. And I like especially like the part about the fact that you can guide that process if you want to, if you're aware of it, right? So, and presumably that's by asking good questions. Is that a fair assumption?
That's an extremely fair assumption. There is a part in the book on the art of questioning because the answer is dependent on the question. Within the question is the answer. So if you want a different answer or a different option, you just ask the question slightly differently because that'll give you and direct you to a whole other outcome, a whole other path, so to speak. And therefore, maybe another option, another solution, another thought pattern. It opens to a lot more possibilities.
Which again leads us nicely to the next point, which is
And this is
the
really not
power of
intentional.
words.
Yeah, it's so not intentional. So words are the most important thing in the world. There's an energy to words, right? Um, when we define a person as kind or polite, it's not just their actions, it's really about their words, right? If a person's words and actions are not aligned, it'll confuse us because we, without realizing it, attach a lot of importance to words because words is the only way through which we communicate with ourselves, right? The thoughts are simply silent words, and we communicate to others with others without language, and that's what distinguishes us from, let's say, the animal kingdom, right? Flora or fauna, because this is the way we can communicate. You and I are interacting now, and as well with your listeners, because we're using words. It's our intermediary, but it is the most all-inclusive, let's say, and precise tool that we have, right? I can speak to you with gestures, but my words are going to be much more precise. And the words that I use will translate the energy that I'm trying to convey. And so words matter very much. They matter in terms of understanding what somebody says. They matter in terms of understanding how somebody choose, what words they choose, because that can let you know a lot about where the person is at and what they choose to divulge and what they choose not to when they could have said something in another number of different ways gives you a huge understanding of who that person is. And often without even realizing it, just because we do attach a lot of importance to words and each word means something different. And so when I work with my clients, for example, my legal background helps me a lot in the precision of the words that I use because law is all about creating with words, creating an infrastructures, creating protective mechanisms, whatever you want. It's just words. It's words and punctuation. Literally, that's what it is. But you can create so much with that, which is, I love words, in case that's not clear by now. But for me, my paintbrush, but really, there is a flow and a harmony to words. And when you're in a negotiation, when you're in a conversation, the richer the conversation, the more productive the negotiation will simply be based on A, your mindset, and B, the words that you choose. And if you give yourself a chance to choose your words, you can get to a much better outcome.
Agreed. Well, I am going to go straight to a favorite, if that's okay with you, because I want to be respectful of
Absolutely.
your time. The favorite
Absolutely.
is the function of fear. Sounds powerful.
Yeah. So fear is fascinating. Whether or not we like it, don't like it, we all, ev the brain, that part of the brain is fear-based. And fear is meant to keep us safe as long as we program it in the way that we align with. And this is what I mean. Um, I don't know how it is in England, but most people in Canada have an alarm system on their homes, right? In the front door, so that in case there's an intruder, they could be forewarned. So the way that it works is that you can actually program the sensitivity so that, it doesn't like all of a sudden let you know there's an intruder when really it's just a leaf that's blowing, right? And it just so happens to be like in front of the sensor. Because that's happened to me, by the way, or the wind is blowing a little bit too strong and you don't want to be warned like every 5 minutes, get something on your phone that says, oh, there's this motion detector. And you're like, really, there's nobody there, or there's a car like 3 streets down that's driving. It's the same thing with fear. Yes, it's important because sometimes in a fight or flight situation, when you do not have time to think and you do not have time to choose, you do want that mechanism to come in. But thankfully, in 2024, most of our scenarios where a fight or flight mode is triggered is not a life and death situation, not a physical life and death situation, right? So, and we're lucky to live in that kind of world or part of the world where that's what it is. But nevertheless, we need to be aware of that. If we understand how we are wired, we will also understand what to do with fear. Fear is something that I would say turn your fear into curiosity, which means fear is a warning. That's all it is. It's not something you have to believe in. It's something you have to take at face value. It's not something that you have to restrict yourself because of, but it's just a little warning bell. And if you get too much, warning of fear in a certain direction, it probably means that your sensor is too sensitive and you want to reprogram it and say, something that's outside my comfort zone, I don't want it to trigger fear because maybe I want to grow. And the only way to grow is to bring something outside your comfort zone into your comfort zone, right? So even though that will engender fear, it's not a fear that I want to go with or agree with or believe. So first of all, approach fear with curiosity. We will all feel fear. All of us will feel fear. And our biggest fear is fear of fear itself. We don't like to feel it because it's right uncomfortable. It's destabilizing. You feel like you're going to lose your footing and you're like, I don't want to feel fear. No, I'm not afraid. I'm fine. So it's either denial or we sink into it. And the truth is, it's just there to let us know it. There's a message in the fear. And the message might be, I'm not aligned. So let me go back inside and understand, why am I choosing this action if it's engendering fear? Is it that I need to get rid of the fear? Or is it that my reason for wanting this action, maybe it's FOMO? It's fear of missing out, but I don't really want to go do this. I don't really want to jump out of a plane, but all my friends are now. And I kind of feel like I have to, but I have this really strong fear and I don't know what to do. And I'm pushing myself. And wait, you might not be aligned with the action you're about to take or the thought that you have in the first place. So find out if that's for you, because it may not be for you, in which case your fear is valid. I don't want to jump out of a plane, let's say. No offense to who does, but and potentially, risk dying maybe because it doesn't speak to me that way. Whereas somebody else might say, oh no, I want that thrill. I want to get out of my comfort zone. I love it. And by all means, but you need to understand yourself well enough and have deep awareness of yourself to know what it is. So approach fear with curiosity, don't sink into it. And then start asking yourself, do I agree with this fear? And as you're asking yourself that question, you're going to be reflected and answer back, and it allows you to get to know yourself better in a certain situation. If I don't agree with the fear, it's not me. And therefore, I want to work through it and go do whatever it is that I wanted to do. And if I agree with the fear, it's a great piece of information to know that I am aligned. I do not want to do this. And so even if somebody pushes me or somebody, sort of makes me feel bad or feel guilty or what, I still won't do it. I'll be able to stand in my own truth and I'll be able to stand my ground in a way that I'm aligned with. I won't feel bad. I won't feel less than, because that's what happens, right? We get influenced by each other, but it's also not always aligned. So fear is very interesting as long as we understand the purpose that it serves and we don't buy into it automatically. We have a choice. We really have a choice when we're presented with our thoughts, our emotions, and our fear, especially because we know that fear is brain-based and sometimes it serves a purpose. Will it will actually save your life? But most of the time it doesn't. You're thankfully not in that kind of situation. Therefore, go through that process. First of all, turn it into curiosity. Let me not be afraid to go explore what this fear is about, because that's where we're stopped. We're like, oh my goodness, I can't. It's just a message. And then turn it into curiosity. Start asking yourself questions. Do I agree with it? If it wasn't here, would I still do what I'm about, or have the thought or take the action that I wanted to do? And then choose now the action that is aligned with you, but for this fear. And you may come with the same result, but you won't feel the fear anymore. It's all of a sudden dissolved. Or you may realize, oh my goodness, I wasn't driving myself here. It was chasing something or trying to avoid something that was driving it, or maybe FOMO or pressure from somebody else. I need to hear myself first and what I'm aligned with, and then go with that. But we do need the process because fear sometimes is very gripping. And that's okay as long as we understand it. It's, sometimes I'll have clients and I'll say, it's okay if you did this out of fear, but now do this process in reverse. Do it in hindsight, because the more you program your brain to do something next time around, or the time after, or the time after that, eventually it will kick into that as an automatic sort of default mechanism of, hold on a second, I'm afraid, but wait, I need to figure out what this is. As you bring that into your norm and as you create that as a habit for your brain, it'll follow the process eventually. And then rather than be gripped by the fear where you're paralyzed, you're going to be able to go explore it and decide or choose whether you even agree with it, you're aligned with it, or what you want to do about it.
That's a great answer. And yeah, I think based on your answers today, I think your keynotes would be amazing to watch. So if they are anywhere online, it would be nice to see them if they are available. But for those people who do want to follow you or get in touch, where do they go?
So first of all, they can go on my website. It's martinecohen.com. So that one's easy. And then they can also go on my LinkedIn, which is Martine Cohen NML, which is No More Layers, which is also the title of my book. And on Instagram, Martine Cohen _. And I'm happy to have them reach out also my email, info@martinecohen.com. And I'd be happy to start a dialogue with anybody that's listening to this.
Okay. Well, I meant what I said. I think your answers have been great, but is there anything closing thoughts for the episode that I haven't asked you about today?
I think I would just mention my book that was recently released in September. If your audience is curious, they might want to go even just read about it on Amazon. It's available on Amazon UK as well. and .ca.com, like, and then they can reach out to me too. The book is set up into different chapters: relationship to self, to life, different scenarios in relationship to others. There are also exercises at the end of it. There's a lot of food for thought. And I feel that that's something that the people deserve to get to know themselves better. People deserve to have that ability, that power to choose, not just decide or to follow or to be in fear or to live in anxiety or overwhelm, which a lot of us experience in today's world. So I find that through these different tools and techniques and just awareness and learning to be present, learning to quiet your mind so you have more mind space to actually just be for a second and figure out what it is that's aligned with you and what you want, because we don't have a lot of space. We don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of mental clarity. And all of those things are very helpful in navigating the world today, especially when we are bombarded through social media and through different messaging nonstop. That overwhelms the brain. So sometimes just being able to pause that or choosing what we filter in and what we let out without feeling bad about it, but just as an alignment from a point of strength, I think that's something that could really help people.
And what's the title of the book?
It's called No More Layers, so that's not difficult. It's something we aspire to, living with no more layers so that you can experience your own essence. And it's discover your inner power and reclaim true freedom from the inside out. Because when you're free of fear, when you're free of your layers, when you're free of external um, influences and pressures, and free sometimes from the incessant thoughts that you have at 3 o'clock in the morning when you really just want to sleep and you have a good night's sleep so you're well rested for the next day. That's true freedom. It starts from the inside. And then when you're free from the inside, you can create the external reality and world and life that you want to for yourself, that you deserve, that you know you could thrive in. Because we have need to move out of survival mode into thriving mode.
All right. Well, I think based on your answers, the reading through the book would be highly beneficial. So congratulations on being an author, and
Thank you.
thank you very much for being a great guest today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much.